Dr. Ervin Laszlo, the World Shift Movement would like to thank you for inviting us into your lovely home for this personal conversation. I'd like to start off by going back a few years. For those who know a little bit about your life, you started your international career as a concert pianist. Then you moved on to some prestigious academic circles. You've been associated with many global organizations. But when did you have that first defining moment when you thought, I need to work towards making a better world?
Well, first of all, Kingsley, let me tell you, it's a pleasure to have this discussion with you and to visit me in my house and a beautiful day in spring in Tuscany. It's a difficult question, you know. I had a very heavily charged childhood because, in a positive sense, I mean, because my mother was a concert pianist and my uncle was a philosopher. Mm-hmm. And so I would have mornings practicing the piano with my mother. I also went to school then. And afternoons I often had walks with my uncle in the park. And so when was the first time that I thought of getting serious about this? It was a recollection, really. It was when my first son was born. And I had to somehow feel that I'm going to get more serious in life, having lived as a concert pianist until then. And then it was a recollection of all the questions that I used to hear from my uncle as a child. And I thought, well, some of those questions are really interesting. And one has one life, perhaps there are several, but this life we know about. And one should make good use of it. And I said to myself, it's wonderful to play the piano and to give concerts, but perhaps there is something else I want to do in life as well. Not for other people, I thought, but for myself, to find out a little bit more. What is this thing called life? Is there a real development in life? How are we relating to nature? What are we doing here on this planet? These are questions that my uncle had asked. And they stuck in my mind, and I decided go look after them. It's a tremendously self-confident or overconfident view. You know, as a 24-year-old or 25-year-old, I thought, my gosh, I can find out something that perhaps in all the history of thought people didn't readily come across. But let me look at it, you know. Mm-hmm. So that's how it all started.
Mm. So here we are now in April 2011. What do you feel now as we speak are currently the most pressing problems in the world?
Change. I think the pressing problem is that we have reached a historical moment, really a bifurcation point where many things are possible, but going on as we have been is not without very serious negative consequences. So the important point here is that it's a point that has been in development, perhaps 2,000–3,000 years, perhaps. Mm-hmm. Ever since man began asking serious questions and started seriously to manipulate and to revamp and to adapt the environment. And each other, of course. We have reached a point where all these tremendous momentum that has been gathering has reached the point where it has to move into the next phase. It's not that it was bad, but it has passed. Its phase has ended. We're moving on to something else. So I think that's a tremendously exciting moment to live in. And I think we're very privileged to live at this time. At the same time, we have a tremendous responsibility for living up to this opportunity that we have before us.
So this need, this pressing need for change, perhaps could be behind the reason why you've established the World Shift community. What else do you hope to achieve by the World Shift community?
If we agree that we need to change, we also have to agree on the famous saying of Gandhi that we have to be the change to start with that we want to see in the world. And that we also have to agree that this shift is something that is happening whether we like it or not. But it is in a very tight race with time. Time I see because the environment, the planet, the whole biosphere is changing on human impact. Mm-hmm. And this change can have cataclysmic consequences. And if we don't hurry up and make sure that we guide change in the positive direction, it doesn't mean that we have to now dominate nature and manipulate it. It means that to make use of the opportunity that we must change because we cannot go on as it is, and therefore come back perhaps to some extent, coming back to the embrace of nature. Mm-hmm. Beginning to live more natural. We are here in a natural environment, but how often do we have in big cities, which today half of the human population is living in cities? How often people have a chance to be out in nature and feel themselves connected with nature? So World Shift, to my mind, the World Shift movement is a conscious attempt to evolve with the world, to go together, to co-evolve with nature, humanity, because we need to do that if we want to make sure that there is a future for humanity and that there is future for life on Earth, actually.
Ervin, you talk about working with nature, and you've used the phrase creating a culture of sustainability. What global and local initiatives would you feel are required to help this culture of sustainability?
Let's try to feel part of nature, part of life, part of the cosmos, instead of being something separate. We have had this kind of a very sad cultural divorce in the West in the past few hundred years. And with the tremendous technology that we have developed, especially in the course of the 20th century. I mean, we started, beginning of the 20th century, it was still steam engines, and we have just a very, very primitive forms of communication in a distance, telecommunication, and now look where we are now. All this tremendous means of using energy, using resources, but also communicating. All of this is now at our disposal. But it's up to us which way we make use of it. We know that the world is a natural world, is an evolving world. We know that it is never stands still. We also know something else, I think, and this is just for a moment to cut back a little bit to the scientific insights that have been coming in the last 30, 40 years. Mm-hmm. We know that life is not an accident. We know that life has developed out of pre-life, I would even say non-life, because almost everything that evolves in nature, from the molecules and the groups of cells onward, everything else has a characteristic of life. Mm-hmm. So you ask what it is. The first thing I think is to do, to participate, to belong, to become one. Because we have been one. Humanity has been one with nature because we've been part of the ecology of the planet. And we have divorced ourselves, especially in the Western world in the past few hundred years, especially in the 20th century. So the time has now come, I think, not to move back to some pre-scientific or pre-rational, purely intuitive world, but to make use of our intuitions, make use of our capacities for thinking, for feeling, for apprehending the world, so that we can again live as a living species, unique species in the sense of having consciousness, a high level of consciousness. All other species have consciousness, I'm sure, but you have a high level of consciousness, and that is a responsibility. So to make use of that, to again, not to be a negative factor, not to be a kind of a cancer on this earth, that destroys its systems, its connections, its evolutionary dynamic, but to be a positive factor. Yeah. That's the challenge. In detail, we can talk about it, of course, how you do, from the very point of how to screw in perhaps a long life light bulb, you know, and to eat more natural food, anything you like. It's all there, it's all possible.